Hi everybody, I am back once again. Today I'm going to be talking about some of the changes that I've been working on and thinking about with my USB wrapper project. So I know that this has gotten some attention in the past from some websites, and we got tons and tons of views because we were on the Adafruit blog and whatnot in my last video when I was actually showing it off and everything. But you know, it's the design was never my end goal idea with the project, right? It's still pretty large. A lot of optimization can be done, and it was the first version. I wanted to get it out there, see what people thought, ideas, feedback, all that sort of jazz. And I know that we're looking at my screen cap here, but in my hands, I'm holding one of my adapters here. And I just feel that better use of the space can be had even further still. So what I've done immediately right now, and one of the things that I'm going to for sure do is for the next version is just completely remove the USB-B connector. Right? It used to be the standard B style connector here, and then the micro B connector over here for power. So, although I personally find the larger B-style connector very useful because of its strength and whatnot, just because it's so much physically larger, it's got excellent mechanical stress relief. But then people have to have an extra one of those cables lying around, and most people don't really use those anymore, other than for like stationary equipment like printers and things like that, are USB connected printers. So although I have several of these cables sitting around, it's kind of unreasonable for somebody to purposely bring one with them if they're going, say, on a flight, or try to borrow one from somebody or something like that, right? So instead, I'm just going to straight up remove it, and this is saved I don't know, what does that look like? Maybe about a centimeter or so off the bottom there. I was just holding it with my hand there, measuring with my pinky. But yeah, about a centimeter or so. So I've then just shoved this up. And now I need to decide what I want to do next with it, right? There's lots more space optimization that can be had, and it depends kind of on what I think people want, right? So some of the ideas just that are quick and easy ones, right? I can bring the sides in a little bit more, right? There's some dead space here on the side. There's a little bit of dead space there on the side, so I can bring that in. I can also move the resistors around, so I could put, like, say, the switches on the other side, the switches and the silk screen on the other side of the circuit board, and put all of the resistors over here, right? So where the silk screen is right now, showing you what the switch selections are, I can just solder the switches onto the other side and have the silk screen also on the other side, so that there's better use of that space also. Another option that I'm thinking about whether I want to do it or not is to move this switch just straight up over here, something like that, right? Bring this all up, so then the micro would be somewhere like here, right? And then cut out all this extra space down here, move the resistors maybe into the space between the two switches or something, and then maybe put like short forms or something like that, like really small text, and then instead of like dedicated charger port, just put DCP or something. And then the idea would be that you'd have to maybe consult the documentation for it or something like that. So that's a little bit less user experience friendly, in that if you pick it up and you don't know anything about it, it would be difficult to determine what some of these things are. But then again, you also have to know what a dedicated charger port is already in order to use it as it is. So maybe that's not the best option either. Another thing that could be done is this could be made, maybe instead of having both of the switches, go with just a one switch solution, right? So we've got the so then move this up also, right? So move that to something like there, and then cut out all the dead space again below, and then just put all of the blank resistor actual footprints all up beside this one, so you can then use the one circuit board. Obviously, the silkscreen would also have to be changed, but then you can just use one board for either a Apple branded one. So you've got all. So then you would or in the kit version you would just solder the Apple specific resistors on, or the non-Apple version, the generic version, right, with the DCP and Sony and open circuit, right? And you would just have that instead as your, you put those resistors in instead. So then, you can, if somebody doesn't have an Apple device, they don't need a board with all these Apple selectors there, if you don't have an Apple device, right? And if you do, then you do want that, and you don't necessarily need the others. So the only disadvantage of that is, of course, if you want to give it to somebody, you want to share it or something like that, or if a friend comes over or something, or so like if you don't have an Apple charger and a friend comes over and their cell phone is dying, and they don't have their own charger, you would have to have either one specifically for those circumstances, or you'd have to have the version, the current version of the board, right? That has both selector switches and everything like that in it. The disadvantage, though, about putting the switches on the other side is that it increases the overall height of the entire board, right? So right now you've got the PCB and you've got pretty much the standard USB-B connector sticking up the highest. And then the next is the actual toggle on the switch, and then after that is the USB-A connector. In terms of height, going which one's the largest to the smallest element that's sticking up. The micro USB connector sticks up a little bit, but not much in comparison to the rest of them. So if I put the switches on the other side of the board so that the silkscreen can be beside where you'd be physically looking, it would increase the overall thickness of the entire project. So, I don't know if that's necessarily a great idea or what. It kind of makes it a little bit more bulky, but you'd be able to save on PCB size. So then it would still bring the overall surface area down, but the volume might still be comparable, right? Of the overall dimensions of the project. So, these are all things to think about. If anybody has any ideas, what they'd like to see, speak up. I know that I had a commenter on one of the previous videos. I think I've only done one, but maybe I've done more than one. One of the previous videos, they're talking about, instead of those larger standard B connector, putting the mini USB instead. And I don't think I'm actually going to do that. I think it's better just to straight up omit it. The mini USB is going to be the same sort of problem as the standard B connector. Granted, it is a lot smaller, so you get rid of a lot of the extra space associated with it. But nobody's going to really have mini USB cables. I've of course got some hanging around because I've got stuff for that, but everybody's got micro cables also. So I've got mini cables from the PlayStation 3 because the DualShock 3 controllers use mini USB, as well as one for my Pick Hit 3 and everything like that. These are all mini USB products, so I've got lots of those cables lying around. But it's still much rarer than micro USB for the average person. So I think it's better to just straight up omit it and just leave the micro for the power side. Not sure where I'm going to put this little element of silkscreen there. And the last thing that I was thinking about doing is actually making the A connector a double stacked connector. So then that way you could charge two devices at once. So say if you're on an airplane or something like that, or and you've only got the one USB port allocated for you, because apparently airplanes now have USB ports. you could then use this and also provide like a splitter of sorts, right? So that could be useful too. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he came up with that idea because he got one of my USB wrappers here when he was heading to his most recent what is it called? Transcontinental? I don't know. He went to Australia, and he wanted to charge more than one thing at once, so he said to me today, hey, it would be great if you had a double stacked USB connector, and then you could charge 2 devices at once, theoretically, right? And you would just put everything in parallel too, right? So you just put all the signaling lines in parallel. So you would be charging both of them with the same specs. So if you had an iPad and the Nexus 5 or something like that, right? You wouldn't be able to set settings separately for them, but then at least you would have at least have the option there. It would just be too unwieldy, and it would be it's just much better than if you have a separate one of these units, right? Because if you had it so that each one received its own connections, then you would have to have switches for everything. It would just be too crazy. That could be something that I do in a future active version of the project. Now here, I'll just show you guys the 3D display of what it looks like so far while I talk. So I might do like an active version in the future where it's got a little microcontroller and it connects, through some sort of mux or whatever, to the digital lines with the various voltages and connections that are needed to remove the switches entirely. And then you would just have, like, say, an up-down toggle. So each of the two, so if there was 2 USB-A connectors, you can just have 2 sets of up-down toggles to then independently set what you want connected to what, right? So you can have things much more compact in that case. And then you would just have like a little LED array or something to give some visual feedback as to what setting you're currently on. So that could be an option too. But I don't know. Anyways, let me know what you all think. If there's anything in particular that you'd like to see with it, leave it in the comments down below. And whatever I decide on, I'll give a little update video when I decide. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, share, whatever. And I will see you all next time.